Hello, everybody, and welcome to Off the Cuff. I'm Alex Dodd, and this is Will Vandervoort, and we finally got the intro down for the first time since we've been doing the show.
I need to sit up. I'm like sitting here like, hey, how y'all doing?
Yeah, Will,
I guess I need to sit up.
You're kind of looks like you're in the same mood as all the Clemson fans this week. A little slouch in the chair, feeling a little defeated.
Yeah, just defeated, a little bummed out. You know what though? I was so mad at Cameron, who has been on my podcast, I believe, Clemson Football, and also with the Clemson Insider. I was so mad at Cameron because we're sitting there talking today, and he's like, yeah, guess what we forgot to talk about this week with the players? I said, what's that? He says, where Garrett Schrader said that they're definitely going to beat Clemson this year. I'm like, well, we could have used that, when we're talking to the players.
Question to ask.
Because he said that during ACC Media Days, that he said that, they're definitely going to beat Clemson this year. And so I was like, okay. So that kind of got lost if you will.
In translation after the way the season's gone for Clemson. I guess people are trying to have a shorter memory and forgot about what happened in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So nobody asked Garrett Schrader about that comment. So that would have been something good to have. It really would have been. But, to ask the Clemson players about, maybe that gets them out, because I'm going to tell you, Alex, I don't know if you saw the interviews, but tell me if some of them didn't seem bummed.
Yeah, it's definitely seemed that way. And, I mean, I probably would be too if I was sitting at 0-2 in the conference and all the goals that I've been talking about all offseason were off the table and you needed a miracle to make the ACC championship game. That's kind of what it's like up in Clemson. And, we got a lot of stuff we want to get to in the show today. Obviously, we're going to talk about Clemson, Florida State, the game that delivered for all of the TV viewers that weren't wearing orange. We're also going to talk about these conference realignment rumors that have been swirling again this week, because why not? That's how we started this show
Let's
2
have
months
fun.
ago. and it seems like it's just never going to go away. We're going to talk about Oregon and their beatdown of Colorado last weekend. We kind of talked about it on the show last week that they might want to prove something in the game, and they definitely did. We're going to talk about Ryan Day versus Lou Holtz, the beef of the century.
If we want to say Ryan Hay, that's fine.
Ryan Day and Lou Holtz. We're going to talk about that long shot scenario for Clemson to get to an ACC title game. And then we're also going to talk about this Clemson-Syracuse matchup this weekend and do our picks as usual. But a lot of stuff to get to. Will, first, let's talk about this Clemson-Florida State game. Florida State, 31-24 winner over the Tigers in overtime in Death Valley. Florida State gets another signature win early in this season.
Yeah, I mean, they do, and you give them credit for finding a way to win a game that they really had no business of winning. I mean, they didn't. I mean, I know they were happy they won, and they should be, and all those things, but, you hope they went back and looked at the tape and saw that they really should have lost the game, and that's the thing. I think that's why Clemson players are so bummed out, is because for that 60 minutes of football, Clemson's the better team. Anybody who watched that game, that really, really watched it, that didn't just turn on overtime and then just make some stupid statement on Twitter after it's over about some transfer portal stuff.
That was Stuart Mandel?
Yeah, that was just ridiculous. So, you got to watch the game, man. If you watch the game, you saw Clemson just dominated the line of scrimmage. I mean, held them to 22 yards rushing. Clemson ran for 146. Florida State had 1 yard rushing in the second half. One yard. And they averaged 1.1 yards per carry in the game. And it wasn't like it was a bunch of sacks that caused that. It was pure running the football. They had 22 yards rushing. I've never seen it where a team held a team to 22 yards rushing and lost the game. And then on the other side, Clemson ran for 130 yards in the second half. Run football, really controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the game the entire time. As Dabo said, they never trailed in the game until the overtime. So, they did everything right, but when it mattered most, and give Florida State credit for making plays. Clemson let them hang around. Yes, I'm saying that. Clemson let Florida State hang around and gave Florida State a chance to win the game at the end, because in all reality, that game should have been over by the end of the third quarter. I mean, because Clemson
Yeah.
was dominating them.
Yeah, I mean, really, the play that changed the game was the scoop and score fumble.
Yeah.
Clemson's driving to go in and
Well,
really put the thing away,
yeah.
go up 2 scores, and instead you fumble and get a 56-yard scoop and score, and the game completely changes. And those are the things we talked about last week that you can't do against a top 5 team. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter how well you play.
Though I don't think Florida State truly is a top. Florida State is a top 5 team as much as Clemson was a top 5 team last year in this game. They're not a top 5 team, and that'll come to fruition here in the next few weeks. Florida State's going to lose to somebody.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind on that because
unless they can get healthy. If they can get healthy,
well, what I mean, Clemson wasn't healthy. Clemson was missing.
I'm not making excuses for
yeah,
Clemson
I mean, yeah, they got a couple guys being banged up, but so does Clemson. I mean, so does a lot of teams. I think that's who they are. I think Clemson showed who they are, and somebody's going to beat them because LSU, the LSU game. When I go back and look at it, when I did go back and look at it, LSU that first half, as we talked about, LSU dominated them, and then even Boston College controlled the game on them to a certain extent. Now, some of that was, I think Florida State did kind of like get the lead and say, well, we'll move on. But although Boston College held them to 100 and held them to 350 total yards in the game. And so you give Boston College credit there. Then when you saw what Clemson did to them, and by the way, Jordan Travis, you disrespected Clemson, knocked the other way around with your comments. You were very disrespectful because Clemson had a great game plan against you and those wide receivers, and it worked for 60 minutes. It worked, and the only time it didn't work is when Clemson's best DB wasn't on the field because he got hurt. So Clemson can make an excuse there. They didn't because Clemson lost the game, as you mentioned, because of the turnover, and that's where Clemson really lost it. And it's just as you could hear coming out of me, it was just, everybody's like around the country is like they got Jordan Travis in the Heisman finalist. And I'm like, he wasn't even the best quarterback in Death Valley that day, and now you're saying he's a Heisman finalist. And then you got Florida State saying they're a national championship contender. And I'm like, no, they're not. I've seen, I'm trying to think of Ohio State play right now. So Ohio State, I think, is better than Florida State.
Seen Oregon, seen Southern Cal.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's better than Florida State right now. Georgia, even though they haven't played their best yet, they're still better than Florida State is right now. I'm going to go ahead and put Michigan. I know a lot of people aren't giving Michigan credit, but I think Michigan's a top 4 team. I mean, Florida State is not even in the top 4, and they're not going to be because they're going. Alex, I'm telling you, they're going to lose to somebody. It could be Duke next week. It could be somebody down the line that nobody expects them to lose to. They will lose to somebody before this season is over. I'm telling you right now, my bet from this point going forward, it's going to be either Duke or Miami is going to beat them.
Yeah, and Miami, man, they just continue to put the pieces together down there. It looks like a really good football team that Clemson's going to have to square off with here right around the corner.
Right.
If you're a Clemson fan looking down the schedule, that one probably scares you in a few weeks.
And it should, because Miami's playing good football and on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They're running the ball and they're stopping people to run. Now, granted, they've only played one good. Well, I won't even call that a good team, but they played one team, Texas A&M, that's worth anything. So we still have some questions with Miami.
And is Texas A&M really worth anything? Is the other question.
But when I watch Miami play, I like what I see way more than I see what I saw at Florida State.
Yep.
I like the way they run the football. I like the way they control the running game on the other side. They seem to be more physical football team than Florida State is. I really like Miami right now. Now, I still got some more to learn, but from what I've seen so far, I think they're probably, if I had to say, okay, who's one team that could beat Florida State, that's probably the one team. It's a rivalry game too. So that makes it even more interesting. We'll see. Florida State says they're back. Well, how fitting is it that Miami's the one who keeps them from being back? Because that's the way history has always been. I'm sorry, Florida State fans, but that's the facts.
Yeah, I thought that Clemson's defense, you give up the critical drive there at the end of the first half, and Dabo pretty much eviscerates Wes Goodwin on national television. and sounded like he did in the locker room too at halftime. But that defense answered the challenge in the second half. And Wes Goodwin, I thought he coached his ass off in the game, if I'm being completely honest. They had a great game plan against Florida State. And I think, to your point about Florida State and the rest of the season, who they've got to play, Clemson kind of put the book out on Florida State last week. And the way to beat them is to dare Jordan Travis to beat you with his arm and put pressure in his face. Don't give him the opportunity to escape the pocket. Anytime you can hold a dynamic player like that, I know he's hurt. I know he had the brace on.
His legs aren't hurt.
Took it off. But his legs aren't hurt. And he rushed 6 times for -2 yards.
Yep.
If you can hold a player like that to negative yards in the run game, then you've got a chance. But Clemson just couldn't make the right play at the right time to win the game, and Florida State did. And that's the difference. You got to make the plays at the right time to put somebody away.
And you know how his legs weren't hurt? Because Clemson would have had 20 sacks if they were. Because he got out. He was able to escape and get away from guys and, either, throw the ball way down the field or throw it out of bounds. And Clemson's defense played great. And by the way, and somebody brought this to my attention, and they made a good point. We say Dabo called out West, but in the past, you've heard Dabo say something about the offense. And that the offense wasn't any good. Is that Dabo calling out the offensive coordinators? I think we kind of jumped the gun because the Wes Goodwin subject is so sensitive. That I think everybody just assumed he's coming after Wes when maybe he's generalizing it and he's just talking about the defense. He didn't say Wes has got to do a better job.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but he did say on the last drive, I didn't appreciate us rushing 3 men on the last drive.
But that's not
pretty direct.
But he's also said, I've heard him say in the past, I didn't really like the fact that we turned the ball over right there.
Well, turning the ball over and lining up in a 3-man.
I didn't like the fact that we went 3 and out right there. I mean,
if he says, I don't like us, running that play on offense.
He has said that before.
And that's a better comparison. I think that's a fair comparison.
So my point being is, we don't know if Dabo was necessarily calling out Wes.
Yeah.
We don't know that for a fact. We're assuming it because so many people want it to be true that we assume it to be. But in all fairness, if we're looking at doing what we do for a living, what he said, we can't assume that. And why is that, Alex?
Because we don't make assumptions, and you know what they say about assuming.
That's right. You don't assume anything.
Classic Murray Dodd line right there. You know what they say about assuming. I think I've heard that one about 100 times in my life. But on the offensive side, I mean, the defense for Clemson was outstanding on Saturday. I don't think anybody would argue with that. But offensively, I thought Clemson looked pretty good with the exception of a couple plays. And, you heard Dabo say it in the press conference this week, you're 4 plays away from being undefeated.
That sounded like Tommy Bowden, didn't it?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, man, I feel like I've heard that from Clemson coaches in the past. Sounded like Tommy Bowden, sounded a little bit like Kevin Steele.
But Dabo, as I told somebody on our message board, Dabo can get away with that because he has been undefeated.
Right.
Several times. So he gets away with it because he's been there, done that. So he can get away with it. When you've won a couple national championships, you get away with it. When you're Tommy Bowden, you don't.
It's also one thing to talk about it.
I love you, Coach Bowden. I'm sorry.
It's also one thing to talk about it too when you lost to a ranked team on the road and a top 10 team at home. It's another thing to talk about it if you had lost to, Wake Forest or something.
Well, they did lose to Duke first game. So. I mean, but Duke's a really good team this year. We know that, and I think they're going to prove that on Saturday.
Yep.
And we'll get into that more a little bit later in our pick 6, I'm sure. But I mean, the offense was really, really good the other day.
Yep.
Better than I thought they were going to be. Better than you thought. Better than anybody out there is willing to admit.
Yep.
Because nobody saw Cade Klubnik coming out there and going 25 for 38 for 283 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. Nobody saw that coming. He sat in the pocket. He read the defense well. He went through his progressions. There's times when he bailed when he needed to and get out of there. The strip sack is not on him. If you think it's on him, you don't know much about football. Because trust me, I've talked to several former players, and they all said the same thing. Phil Moffitt's got to pick that guy up. There's no way Klubnik's got eyes in the back of his head that he can see that guy coming. people are saying, oh, well, he's got to feel it. Nope, you don't feel it because you're assuming your dude's doing his job.
Well, that's why you keep the extra protector in there. And the other thing about that play that didn't make a whole lot of sense is that instead of going to the quarterback's backside, like you typically do on a play like that if you're the running back, Maffa stepped up in front of the quarterback almost like he thought there was going to be middle pressure and leaked out in the middle of the field. Instead of doing what you're supposed to do is pick up the pressure on the edge and then leak out to the flat. It's kind of
exactly, which is what he should have done. Levon says as he did it, Levon was breaking down. He says the running back is supposed to scan the field. He did exactly what you said. He scanned the front part of the field, didn't take time to scan the other side. So he just went here. He looked over here, says he didn't see anybody because they were hiding him over here. And so what he should have done is, like you said, turn this way. He would have saw the blitz coming if he turns this way. And then he'll be able to – he ain't going to stop the guy because the guy would probably ran through him. But by him being in the way, that gives Klubnik enough time to throw that ball and get out of the way, right?
Yeah, it alerts your quarterback that there's pressure in the pocket to begin with. And to that point – Cade Klubnik, I thought he did a great job of handling pressure when it was there throughout the day. He stepped up in the pocket and took some hits. He wasn't doing the thing that he did against Duke where he was running 10 yards away from pressure. He stepped up in the pocket. He made throws, and it paid off. And if Clemson's able to do that down the stretch, then maybe you can see some things going in the right direction for you. I know it's really hard for Clemson fans to look at silver linings after the way that the season started. I mean, who would have looked at the Clemson slate and said they were going to be 0-2 in the ACC, sitting at 500 going into this Syracuse game? And the Syracuse game carried a lot of weight this weekend. I don't think there are very many people who would have made that prediction before the year.
I wouldn't have. I mean, none of us saw them losing to Duke. I think we all assumed they could lose to Florida State. By the way, the beeper going off is we're cooking here in the background, so it's just going off. So it's not a bomb about to explode. I'm not about to go.
That would be a horrible podcast. But Will, you would get to go out doing what you love.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, none of us saw them losing to Duke. I mean, so it really goes back to that Duke game. Nobody saw it coming, and you knew if they did not win last week, the situation they'll be in because of what happened at Duke. And by the way, I talked about Clemson deserved to win this game and was the better team. Duke deserved to win that game back then. And we said as much when we did this podcast then. So, it is what it is right now. The Tigers, I told you this before we got on, Alex, they're staring at 0-3 in the ACC for the first time since 1998.
That isn't even born yet, people.
I mean, I never thought I would say that. So how big is this game this week? This game is huge for this team. And I was on Qualk's show the other day over on the Roar FM on CCP, and Qualk asked me, can I remember another time that it was like this, where you felt this kind of pressure and the team also being down coming into it? And I said, well, Ben's probably going to want to take me off the air when I say this. I said, but the last time that I remember it being this way was 1992 when Clemson hosted Florida State in a first night game in the Valley since like 1939 or whatever it was. And Clemson did everything right. Outplayed Florida State, forced 4 turnovers, should have won the game. But Charlie Ward, being Charlie Ward, made some miracle plays at the end, and they found a way to win the game with 1:24 to go and beat Clemson 24-20. That next week, Clemson was so down because they put so much into that Florida State game. They played at Georgia Tech the next week, a very bad Georgia Tech team led by quarterback Tom Luganville. and the rambling wreck of Georgia Tech beat Clemson that night. And Clemson never really truly recovered from that Florida State game. They finished the year 5-6, had their first losing season in 17 years or 15 years at that time. And it was a downer. And it all started with that loss to Florida State. That's the last time I can remember where Clemson team just was this down after a loss and needing a win the very next week. And so, hopefully history doesn't repeat itself this week in Syracuse.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, about this Syracuse team, it's not like they're anything to laugh at. I mean, they've got some good players on this team. Garrett Schrader's a heck of a quarterback, so you can't go in there feeling sorry for yourself and expecting to win. There have been some other things that we've heard this week that, sounds like some people are pissed off, which is what you want from a team that started the year this way. You want somebody to have an edge to themselves. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think that there is a little bit of that too, that some players are pissed off going into this, or is it just Dabo?
I didn't see it, but I'm not at practice. So,
Right.
I mean, at practice, it can be something different. Now, I didn't see that at the press conferences I was at. No, I didn't see that. And so I won't say necessarily they're pissed and from that standpoint, but they're also in front of the media and maybe they're controlling their emotions a little bit better. What's happening behind the scenes, I don't know. I was a little surprised to see Dabo say that, though, that we're a pissed off team. So he'll know better than I do. I mean, let's be honest. He'll know better than I would. So, so I'll trust him that he makes that statement for that to be true statement. So, we're going to find out because they need to be pissed off because they're going into what is now, granted, it's not 80,000 people, but it'll be a hostile environment. It's almost a sellout up there. They're trying to get those last upper deck seats sold out, Alex. So if you want to go to Syracuse,
I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it.
You and Rachel can, get on the plane and drive.
We got a big game up here on Saturday, Will. We got the Black Hills Brawl, the 138th edition of the
Black Hills
like
it. Brawl. The 100 and what?
138th between Black Hills State and South Dakota Mines. It's the fourth most played rivalry in the country, longest running rivalry in Division II. Yep.
Well, how about that? Good.
The only ones ahead of it are 3 Ivy League matchups. So they played twice a year when they were in the NAIA ranks for a long time. So they played a bunch of times. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna be doing on Saturday night. But another positive sign that I saw from the Clemson offense on Saturday was the way that Klubnik distributed the ball. Didn't seem like he was honing in on one particular target. There were a lot of guys that got catches, kind of spread the ball around.
Oh yeah, he made great decisions.
So I thought that was another good sign. The only negative sign, other than Maffa's missed protection, and he did it twice in the game. Once led to a sack, and once to the sack fumble.
2 of the 3 sacks were on Maffa. 1 was on Klubnik.
Yep, and that's why you saw him come out of the game there.
None on the offensive line for you offensive line haters out there. They're always like, "Oh, the offensive line for Clemson sucks."
Yeah, no, and the other thing we have to talk about for the offense, though, unfortunately, is the RPO call in overtime in 3rd and short that puts you in a 4th and 1 situation, that 4th and 1.5, where you don't have any really good play calls on a final play. So what did you see on the RPO call? I know that they've exhausted saying that it shouldn't have been an RPO, but what did you see on that?
Yeah, I mean it was an RPO though. You're talking about 3rd and 1, right? And you
3rd and 1.
Give it to Shipley. Yeah, that's a play where Klubnik's got to know the situation, but also the coaches need to relay that to him. And Dabo owned that at the end of the game. He says, that's something we got to do better as coaches to make sure he understands the situation. Like, you need to pick up a first down to keep the drive going. You don't need to be putting yourself in a 4th and 2 situation. And yes, he said the read was correct. He made the correct read. You got 3 guys out there and they have 2. The read is, okay, pull it and give it to your guy. You got 2 guys to block, 1 guy to run. But, what he didn't count on was the safeties coming over and linebackers flowing over and blowing that play up.
Well, you also don't count on the fact that none of your wide receivers over there expected the ball to be thrown their way.
Exactly.
And you can see it clear as day when he made the throw that everybody on that side looked kind of stunned that the ball was coming their way.
I think Shipley was stunned. Shipley's like, really, again? I'm not getting the ball? And the thing that's bad about it is Clemson was 0 for 4 on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 3 and shorter in that game. They would have been 1 for 3 because the offensive line got a great push. He might have even scored on that play. And so, because Florida State was flowing to the wide receivers, everybody was going that way. The offensive line got a great push, and it would have been a first down and then some. And so, your young guy has to understand the situation. That's really the only true mistake he made the whole game. And it just happened to be at the worst possible time to make it. But look, Cade Klubnik impressed me. So I'm not going to hold that against him. It just happened to be just at that moment a bad time at that moment. But I'm not going to hold it against him what he did. And so, we'll push forward and see what the Tigers do going forward. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's kind of where everybody is right now in the Clemson universe. It is what it is. The good news is that there's a lot of season left. The bad news is that there's a lot of season left. And if things continue going like they have been, it's not going to be a very good year in Tiger
Do you
Town.
see where Bill Conley put out the S&P plus, which of course I think all that crap is crap.
Yeah.
I think most of the time that crap never comes true. I mean, sometimes it does, most of the time it doesn't. But do you see where it says basically there's a 28 or 29% chance Clemson goes 8-4, like a 23% chance they go 7-5. So I'm like, yeah, I think they go 9-3. If they win this week, I think they go 9-3. Losing to Notre Dame is what I'm thinking the other loss might be, or North Carolina. They won't lose both those games. It'll be either or situation. And if they win both those games, I think they go 10-2. But I think I think Clemson, if they win this week, this is the game to me. Clemson's got to win this game. And a lot of people look at Miami too as a tough game because it's at Miami and Miami's playing well, and I agree with that. But I think it's more this game here is going to tell us what the Tigers are going to do the rest of the way.
Yeah, and we'll just go ahead and jump into that before we get into all this other crazy stuff around the country. Clemson and Syracuse get rolling on Saturday at noon. Another early one for me, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. What are you looking at when you're breaking down this game between Clemson and Syracuse, and what do you kind of think the deciding factor is going to be, other than energy?
I think it's going to be other than energy. I think the deciding factor is going to be Garrett Schrader. I really do. If Clemson can contain him, and then of course, the obvious stuff. Don't turn the ball over and give them short fields and that nature. Which, they can't do that. We know that, but this team, they cannot turn the ball over. They'll lose. There's 2 proofs of evidence out there to prove it. So they got to be really good and take care of the football. And I think as far as the key for them is going to be stopping the big, tall quarterback, Garrett Schrader, and what he does with the football in his hands. He's like a poor man's Josh Allen, if you will. He's tall, 6'4", 230. He can run like the deer if he gets an open space. But he's also can cause you to miss and have break tackles because he's strong like Roethlisberger and Allen are. So he's got those intangible things to keep plays alive. So it's going to be key for Clemson to keep him in the pocket. Don't let him scramble at all. Make him sit in the pocket and beat you from the pocket, which I don't think he can do as good because he's not as accurate a passer. And I think you can really control the game that way. So interesting to see how Clemson plays him, because if he does get outside the pocket, Alex, what they can't do, those DBs cannot move up to say, oh, man, we need to go stop him because he ran for 195 yards against Purdue. If you do, guess what? He's going to throw over the top and hit a big play 30, 40, 50 yards down the field.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is, Clemson has historically had some really tight games against Syracuse, and had a bad one up there not too long ago. This is not an easy place to play. There's going to be, everybody wants to beat Clemson always, especially since they've been in the spotlight for so long. So there's going to be a good crowd up there in the whatever dome, whatever they're calling it now. And Clemson's got to be able to manage that and kind of bring some
JMA wireless dome. I think that's what it's JMA wireless dome.
Let's just call it the Carrier Dome. I know it's not the Carrier Dome, but it was probably bad advertising for Carrier.
Just like I call it Grove Stadium.
That's probably fair. But we don't even. What is that stadium called now? Wake Forest has got like a new name now.
Truist Field.
No, they called it something different now. It has a new name.
They do? Oh, yeah, I thought they called it Truist Field because
it's like something hard to pronounce, like a Acrisure or whatever. It's something weird like that.
Stadium, the worst name in sports.
Yeah, but this is a well-coached Syracuse team too. I think last week maybe they got a little bit of the look-ahead thing going on with Clemson. They came out kind of flat against Army and struggled early in the game. Seemed like maybe they had some kind of look-ahead thing going on.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, but we don't know really much about Syracuse, right? I mean, let's be honest. The 4 teams they've played are not very good defensive teams. So look at Purdue. I mean, Purdue's probably the worst team in the Big Ten. I mean,
sorry, Matt Connolly.
Yeah, I mean, it was true. I mean, even Northwestern's got to win, right? So I mean, they might be the worst team in the Big Ten, and they're they got a new coaching staff, and they're trying to rebuild things there. So, I just don't know much about Syracuse. They're 4-0. They beat Toothpaste U in Colgate. That's 65-0. I mean, from a position standpoint, if we look at Clemson's offense against their defense, I mean, they're like small up front like they were last year. So I think Clemson can run the ball on them. Remember, Will Shipley went off on him, 172 yards rushing, career high in that game for him. So I think Clemson's game plan is probably do the same thing. Run the ball. And the difference is in this game, I know Dino Babers has been a thorn in the side for Clemson's passing game, even with Trevor Lawrence there. This game is different because it's not about the quarterback. It's about the scheme. Yep. And this scheme gets wide receivers open. Yep. So if Club can just hit the open man, then Clemson can – that'll even make it harder for them to stop Clemson's running game. And then Clemson really should just take over the game and win the line of scrimmage. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Dino Babers tries to prepare for this game from his scheme, because I think Clemson matches up with Syracuse better than they have in years past when they were just basically a pro-style team.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case too. I mean, Schrader, though, he's a leading rusher. He's thrown for almost 1,000 yards already. Yeah, he played toothpaste U and has had some kind of cupcakes to open the year. But you got to contain him. LaQuint Allen at running back. He's only 5 yards behind Schrader. So we'll see what Syracuse is going to try to do in this game. I'd be interested to see
what. But it all goes through Schrader. That's what I'm saying. If you stop him, Dabo even said it the other day. Dabo says everything runs through him, runs through the quarterback. And so pretty much what Clemson's game plan is: stop the quarterback. So your
game plan in a lot of ways is really similar to what you did last week, just against a less talented group.
Even different though this week, because Schrader is more dangerous in the run game than Jordan Travis is. So what you're going to do is you're going to see Clemson probably. I think they're not going to want to take away Trotter and Barrett Carter. They want those guys to blitz, because when they do, I think the difference they learned probably from the Duke game is to probably have that third linebacker in the game in spy. Yep. And so I think Wade Woodaz is going to play in this game, but his job is one job and one job only. Wherever Schrader goes, he goes. And that's what his job's going to be in this game, not to do anything else. And also, let's be honest, when you get Wade Woodaz on the field,
good things happen.
Turnovers happen.
A guy's a playmaker.
Every time he's on the field, it seems like Clemson gets a turnover or two. So last week, he wasn't on the field as much, right? And so no turnovers. So
yep.
Let's see how they do. Put him in there. They didn't need to put him on the field last week. Let's be honest, because the back end was doing so good. They didn't really need to put him on there as much. But I think they might do that this week, change things up. And that's going to throw Syracuse for a loop too, because I think Syracuse is going to think they're going to come out there in that 4-2-5. If they come out there in a 4-3, I think that'll throw them for a loop a little bit, because they'll be counting on, Andrew Makuba sitting there on that nickel spot, and they're seeing a 6'4" guy saying, "Okay, what are you going to do?"
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Clemson, it probably would help with that energy factor if they're able to force a couple turnovers in this game, just to get feeling good about themselves early. So that would be a good sign for the Tigers, I think. Let's talk a little bit about this Oregon-Colorado beatdown that happened this past weekend. We talked about it on the show last week. You picked Oregon to cover. I think I picked Oregon not to cover in the game.
I said cover all day, baby.
Yeah, I thought Bo Nix might have done some Bo Nix things, but man,
Bo Nix is not Bo Nix at Oregon.
Yeah, he's the scheme and the personnel just fits him so much better up there.
He's Boo Nix. I don't know.
Boo Nix. No, Boo Nix is what he was at Auburn. Now he's actually Bo.
Yeah, I guess that's the better way to describe it.
Because they were booing him up there.
Auburn people are probably pissed. They're like, "Why is he so good up there?"
Were you surprised to see Oregon go for it on fourth down all these times and run all these trick plays and do all this, kind of gimmicky stuff against Colorado, especially considering the fact that Deion never really said anything about
run a punt
Colorado,
from their own 16?
Fake punt? That Deion never really said anything about Oregon going into the game.
I think it was just more of everybody's talking about Oregon. Talking about Colorado, and that's helping Colorado recruit, which Oregon goes up against Colorado for some of these kids.
Yep.
I think this was more of okay, they're all talk. We're all about playing. Look at us. we're going to go and just beat the tar out of them, and we'll show you everything you've seen and heard is just a bunch of smoke. So we're going to turn the mirror on them and show them who they really are. I think that's what it was, to be honest with you. This was a recruiting thing, and this wasn't about this game, because I think Oregon knew they were going to win it. The coaches did. This was about getting those players that they're in competition with Colorado, making sure they stay with Oregon. That's what I think this was. To say, hey, yeah, you can go play at Colorado, but you can see they're a long way away. We're here now. And so I think that's why they were doing those things, because they knew they could do them. Because Colorado, I mean, dude, let's be honest. We talk about Syracuse being small in the trenches. Colorado's like a high school team on the defensive front.
Yep.
Why TCU didn't run for 700 yards, I do not know.
I mean, Oregon rushed for 240 in the game. They could have rushed for 600 if the game went on any longer.
Oregon could have picked their number. They called the dogs off at halftime.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's like you're saying, Oregon wanted to make a statement that this is our league. Everybody's talking about Colorado.
For 1 year.
And this is our league. Well, I guess forever. If you win it this year, do you win it forever?
I mean, in reality, it's Washington State's and Oregon State's league.
Yeah. But Oregon definitely made a statement in the game. I think I was maybe surprised to see, I don't know, Oregon talking about how Colorado is all about flash is just kind of ironic to me. Mm-hmm. This is a program that made a name for itself by having 85 different uniforms and changing their colors and building a weird looking facility. I mean, this is the team that's built on flash. I mean, it's definitely not Dan Lanning style, but it was a little weird to me to say, hey, we're Oregon. We're the original flash team. This, I think, would have been a better, more true statement for them to make.
Yeah, it was. And they just really dominated the game and, just took it over from the very beginning and just kind of showed that they were just going to blow Colorado out the water, is what they were going to do. And, they were the better team. They knew they were the better team, and they were going to go prove they were the better team and get everybody to shut up about Colorado. It sort of did. But then, of course, a guy makes a statement to his team. He's talking to his team, and everybody's got to go and make a big deal about it. Like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe he said that.
Well, Nick Saban today actually was on Pat McAfee, and they asked him about it. And Nick Saban said, yeah, I don't really have a problem with saying anything to your team. I think it's just kind of weird to invite the media into your pregame huddle to do it. So I think I definitely understand that perspective. It's a little weird to invite the media in there for it. Seems kind of like some of the things, again, that Oregon's talking about pregame and postgame about Colorado being a flash team. Seems like kind of a flash move to invite the media in for your pregame speech.
Yeah, I guess I could see that side of it. And Saban makes a very valid point. Of course, he is a Deion Sanders apologist, though. Not that I'm not. I mean, I'm not. I got nothing against Deion personally. I like Deion a lot, but Nick Saban is a friend of his, and so maybe he's taking up for his friend. But at the same time, I get Nick Saban's point taken. Like, you don't see Dabo Swinney bring the media in, or you don't see Nick Saban bring the media in. So when you do that and you say something like that, I guess you got to deal with the heat coming out of the kitchen, right? So, but still, people just still need to just chill. Everybody gets so offended. It's like, just stop. You're not, just stop. I saw a comedian the other day, right? And he's talking about how everybody always up in arms about being offended. So his whole thing was like, you can be offended. That's cool. Nothing's going to happen. It doesn't mean just because you're offended, you're going to all of a sudden die or something because you're offended. He's like, and he says, so if I'm up here on stage and I make fun of Jesus, he's like, and you laugh, you're not going to stand up and say, I'm offended because, I'm not going to go to heaven now, or something like that. He's like, in other words, he's like, that has nothing to do with anything. You being offended doesn't affect anybody else but you. You're the only person it affects. He says, that's what people don't understand. I thought it was a great point. I'm like, very valid point,
Well, while we're talking about people being offended, Ryan Day in his postgame twice referenced Lou Holtz talking bad about Ohio State in a bit that was on the McAfee show where he was being interviewed by himself by a guy pretending to be him. So Ryan Day offended by Lou Holtz talking to Lou Holtz. What are your thoughts on that?
I wish Kwok was here so he could do the Lou Holtz impression and do this, because he did it on the radio the other day and I loved it. But I mean, come on. Ryan Day should know better. He should talk about your team, right? Talk about what a great win it is. Hey, you went out here and you proved the naysayers wrong, if you want to say something like that and all. But don't. What's the thing?
Don't invite Lou Holtz into the parking lot.
Yeah. I mean, you got upset about what an 88-year-old man said, honoring their 35th anniversary of their last national championship, knowing he's a Notre Dame apologist, right?
Yeah.
So all these things are true, and you're offended that he said those words. What did you expect him to say?
What do you think he's going to go out there and pick Ohio State?
Yeah, exactly.
During his championship reunion at a school that he loves, being interviewed by a guy that's impersonating him.
Exactly. I mean, that'd be like asking Steve Spurrier, not to say anything positive about Florida when they're playing Tennessee. I mean, come on. I mean, that's not going to happen. So, yeah, it's a little upsetting that, and was it somebody else got mad at Lee Corso? Who was it that got mad at
the Washington State coach got mad at Lee Corso for saying that they were playing the Nobody's Going to Watch Bowl against Oregon State.
Yeah,
which is pretty true.
I
don't know if I know anybody who watched the game.
Yeah, I mean, other than the Oregon State and Washington State fans, probably nobody.
The Uiagalelei family. I don't know that anybody watched the game.
Yeah, they watched the game. There's no doubt. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, man. I mean, come on, people. If you stop getting offended to be offended, just – I don't know, shake it off, if you will. I mean,
why is Ryan Day, who just won a top 10 football game on the road against a team that, by the way, decided to play 10 players on the final 2 plays of the game, which is insane to me. Why is he worried about something that an old man said instead of just celebrating the major victory his team just got on the road? I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I think part of it, and I heard some people saying that in this age now, it's all about everybody wants to react to things, and it's like that's the cool thing to do. So it's like, oh, I'm showing my team, I got their back and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you got your back on a 90-year-old man? I think they know you had it. Coach, we got you. We think you can beat Lou Holtz, Lou Holtz isn't like Lou Holtz 30 years ago. Lou Holtz 30 years ago may bite your ankles, but not this one. So I don't know, man. It's ridiculous. There's more important things to do. Worry about X's and O's. Like you said, you won because the other guys had 10 players for consecutive plays, came out of a timeout with 10 players on the field, and then didn't even get one in on the next play. So it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Man.
Again this week too, just crazy that this is even a point of conversation in the middle of football season. We thought maybe we'd avoid talking about conference realignment until, maybe like football season ended.
Speaking of what you're doing, yeah.
But everybody seems to have brought back up this conference realignment talk again this week with, a couple really respected reporters in the state of South Carolina saying that Clemson could be imminently leaving the ACC, which, to be quite honest, I think Clemson fans probably got excited about this week, but seems like maybe it might just be a little bit of smoke.
Yeah. I think eventually we all know Clemson's going to go. I think that's just, but I don't know. I'm not going to shoot down anybody's report because they trust their sources, and those, as you mentioned, those guys are good reporters, and a lot of us, I think, want it to be true. So we're definitely not, shunning it by any stretch of the imagination because we know those two guys are two of the best there is. So, I think right now, though, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen as soon as maybe some people think. Now, that could change. Right. And the only reason I say that is because as of right now, Clemson hasn't got an invitation. And until there's an invitation, there's no leaving. So right. That's the only thing that's holding us up. That's the only thing. Of course, we reported that a long time ago at the Clemson Insider. That was the only thing holding us up, and so that still remains to be the case. And we'll see what happens here in the next few weeks or months or whatever. But as of right now, this moment, no, Clemson they're still in the ACC. Will they still be in the ACC at the end of October? Everything I'm hearing, yes, that will be the case. But does that mean could things change here in the next few weeks? Possibly. I mean, you never know.
If
it's so fluid, you don't know.
If one thing's true in this conversation is that these things can change at the drop of a hat.
Correct.
I mean, there could be somebody in the Big Ten or SEC office that sends an invitation next week.
It could be happening right now.
That nobody knows is coming, and it could be a thing. But yeah.
Now, what I did think was interesting about one of the reports was what was coming out of Columbia, and I wonder if that's where the firestorm started.
Yeah,
with this line of reports, I'm wondering if the firestorm started in Columbia because maybe some information got out there, and maybe it's just the folks in Columbia don't want Clemson to join, so they're throwing it out there now just to get the rest of the SEC people to back them. Who knows? You don't never know what somebody's intentions
are. These situations are so political too.
Me and you are in the business of reporting. We understand that there's times you're told things because that person that tells you has an agenda.
Yeah. There's
a reason why they're telling you. And so, it's the person who's telling you you trust that source because A, they probably never let you down before. And B, maybe they're in a position that they know more. They do know the whole situation, right? So you trust the source in those situations, but you always ask yourself, well, why are they telling me this now? Well, there's probably a reason for that, and it's generally they're pushing their own agenda to get things done. So maybe this firestorm started in Columbia because they're pushing their agenda,
trying to sway a little bit of political capital there
toward their side. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it happening. I was kind of surprised to even see any reports coming out this week. It's just so weird that it would come out right in the middle of the season. But then at the same time, if you're Clemson, it would be kind of nice for people to maybe not to be talking about your football team being 0-2 in the conference to start the year.
Yeah, and maybe, I thought initially that's what was going on here. I was like, oh, Clemson's clearly doing this so they can deflect what's going on with the football team and, change, get the mood of the fan base feeling excited about something. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now. And, we'll see how things play on out. Like you said, the only thing we're sure of when it comes to realignment is that we're not sure of anything. And it just means that it's such a fluid situation. Like, yes, we're sure of what we know right now at this moment, but it could change tomorrow. That's how fluid it is.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. And kind of sticking with the ACC in the present, somebody posted on Twitter this week this dream scenario for Clemson fans that Clemson somehow ends up making the ACC championship game again. I think probably more than a long shot at this point. But what do you think? I mean, there's teams at the top that, Louisville, they don't play anybody the rest of the year. I think they play Duke. You got Duke's got an okay schedule. They got to play some tough teams down the stretch. You got Miami, who's off to a good start. You got Florida State, who's off to a good start. Is there any chance that Clemson somehow backdoors its way into the ACC title game?
Well, there's always a chance. I don't think right now
there's a chance.
There is a chance right now. Yes. Now, what I figured out what's got to happen is you got to have Miami. Clemson's got to win out, which means they beat Miami, North Carolina, which is good. Yep. Okay. Then you need Miami and North Carolina to lose to somebody else. That means possibly Florida State beating Miami and Duke beating North Carolina, or maybe you need North Carolina to beat Duke. Maybe somebody else beats North Carolina. I don't know, but somebody else has to beat North Carolina. If it happens, then you got yourself a situation. The thing I can't figure out is I can't see Louisville losing 3 times at this point, and I can't see Duke losing 3 times at this point. And so that's the interesting thing.
So then you're wondering, what even are the
5-way tie for second? You got 2 teams, you got 5 teams with 2 losses. That's possible. Does Florida State lose to somebody they're not supposed to? Then that really shakes up the apple cart, right? So I think what the ACC found out this year is that because Clemson didn't play along and just go through the conference undefeated or just 1 loss, that they created a firestorm.
They just brought coastal chaos to the entire conference.
So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. And the ACC is good this year. They got a lot of good teams. Yeah. So I can see some carnage happen here. We're already seeing it with Clemson. And if people don't think Clemson isn't going to play a factor in at least who goes to to Charlotte, you're wrong. Clemson's
Yeah.
going to play a role in whether they're going or who else is going.
Or whether they're playing spoiler. I mean,
that's what I mean. Yeah, they're keeping somebody else from going because they're playing the role of spoiler. So there's going to be some carnage along the way on this road. The question is for Clemson, is it enough carnage to get Clemson back in the race? Because right now, Clemson's got a long road ahead of them right now. I mean, they just got to worry about beating Syracuse first.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. It could be setting up for a fun back stretch of the season. And if one thing is for certain, is that when the ACC changes the format of its title game to try to get desired teams in the game, it hasn't necessarily worked out for them. Because when they added Miami to the conference and wanted that FSU-Miami matchup, they never got it. They could get it this year, though. Who knows?
Yeah, the year they want Clemson, Florida State, they're going to get Miami, Florida State. That would be what the ACC is all about.
Or
I mean,
Duke,
just be
Duke
honest.
and Miami. You're something crazy.
Or Duke and Miami. I think
Duke
the ACC.
and Louisville.
See, that's where the ACC doesn't want that to happen.
Yep.
But they wouldn't mind Duke being there because Tobacco Road and all that, traditional Tobacco Road, you at least have that. But you don't want Louisville in any of these scenarios.
Yep.
That's what they don't want to happen. Because
that's a channel turner.
Yes, it's a channel turner, and Louisville they don't play any of the hard teams in the ACC this year. So they have a very easy road to get to Charlotte. Louisville has unbelievably that the ACC set the road for Louisville to go to Charlotte. That's the crazy thing, but they did. And so, like, they set a hard road for Clemson. They said, well, you're going to start the year at Duke. You're going to host Florida State in week 4. And then you're also going to go to Miami. You're going to host North Carolina. Clemson got like
murderers,
defending ACC champions. My goodness,
they got the opposite of the Georgia treatment.
Yes, they got the exact opposite.
So the one thing Louisville, they do have to play Duke and they do have to play Miami. So they play Miami on the road. And they play Duke.
But they don't play Clemson. They don't play Florida State, and they don't play North Carolina.
No North Carolina. They play Pitt, but obviously Pitt's decided it doesn't want to participate in football.
Where's that game at?
The Pitt game is at Acrisure Stadium.
Well, that could be different because, see, Pitt's one of those teams that just seems they rise up when they're not having a good year and bite somebody in the butt. And maybe Louisville's the one they bite in the butt this year. We'll see.
Yeah,
the Pitt defense is still very good. I mean, they're still they're still in the top 10 in total defense and stuff.
What's the deal with Phil Dracovic too? I mean, because I feel like for 3 years everybody's been talking about this guy like he's going to be the savior of the world and have a great season. He just hadn't done it. He hasn't been able to replicate that early success in his career.
He's just not it, man. I mean, we're finding out the same thing with Brendan Armstrong at NC State. He hasn't looked that good, right? I mean, a lot of people said, okay, is it going to be 2021 Brendan Armstrong or is it going to be 2022? Well, so far it looks like 2022. Yeah. So everybody's blaming Tony Elliott in the Virginia offense for his struggles. It might just been it was the player. You know?
And if it wasn't for 3 of the stupidest penalties I've ever seen in less than a minute, then he probably would have lost to his old bunch.
Should have lost. I mean, let's just be honest. Should have lost because you wonder, does Virginia go for 2 points there and try to win the game? Instead of it, going overtime or whatever, you wonder how Virginia would approach that at the end of the game, right? They got the 2-pointer and tied it. Oh, they actually did tie it. So they tied it with a 2-pointer. Yep. Never mind. I stay corrected. They tied it with a 2-pointer because they had a miracle 2-point play, and that's when he took his helmet off.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
If ands and butts were candy and nuts every day.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe Virginia doesn't win that game regardless because they would have went to overtime, and I don't know if Virginia could win it in overtime, but anyway, it didn't happen because of the penalties. My goodness, unbelievable. So Tony Elliott, he's got to be scratching his head. Then he turns on and watches his alma mater on Saturday, and he just watched them, crap the bed too. So it's going to be a very frustrating weekend for Tony Elliott.
Yeah, I feel bad for that guy. Well, let's get on to our pick 6 here. Right. There are some good games on the slate. Some games with potential for chaos on the slate too. Right. I think this could be one of those weekends that you look at it and maybe it's not as good as you think it's going to be, but maybe it is. Who knows? So first, we've got number 10 Utah at number 19 Oregon State. Oregon State a 4.5-point favorite on a Friday night at 9 p.m. in Corvallis.
Yeah. Is Utah quarterback going to play again? I mean, play or not, or what?
You imagine so. You imagine that he's going to play.
You imagine he's going to play. If he's going to play.
But Oregon State's a 4.5-point favorite.
If he's going to play, I know it's gone up. It started as a 3. The line was 3. Now it's 4.5. So they know something we don't at Vegas, which concerns me because my pick is Utah. Because I know
he said 2 days.
Uiagalelei.
Let's see. 2 days ago, we don't have any other update. 2 days ago, Kyle Whittingham reveals quarterback practice plan as Cam Rising nears his return.
Yeah.
Seems like the nearing return that's never going to happen. I mean,
I don't think it's going to either. His return has as much chance as Clemson winning the national championship. So
0.
That's kind of where I'm going there, Alex. But anyway, to just go to the thing, Oregon State's 4.5-point favorite right now, as we're looking at it. So that makes me nervous because the line has gone up to 4.5. I still like Utah in this game. I like their defense, and I think their defense is going to confuse DJ. I mean, DJ did not look good last week. He did not look good the week before. As the competition gets better, we're seeing DJ start to be DJ again. So, I mean, he looks like he did at Clemson. I'm sorry. He looks exactly like he did at Clemson. I love DJ personally. I think he's a great kid. But, as a quarterback, DJ struggles in games like this. So I'm going to go with Utah. Give me plus 4.5.
Yeah, give me the Utes plus 4.5 in this one too. I just think they're too well coached. Their scheme's going to be too good. I mean, every time that Utah plays in a matchup like this, they overperform.
They just play bully ball.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the case in that one too. The next one, the one that we've already talked about a fair amount, Clemson 6.5-point favorites at Syracuse in the Cricket Wireless Dome at noon on Saturday against
GMA Wireless Dome. Give me Syracuse with the plus 6.5. I think this game's going to be tight. I got Clemson winning at 23-17, so I'm gonna go with Syracuse in this one.
I'm gonna take Clemson with the points in this one. I know it's kind of a high line for a road game, but I think if Dabo is actually speaking truth, that the team is pissed off, then I think they should be able to impose their will physically in the game up front if they want to. So I'm going to take Clemson with the points.
If they win the turnover battle, they're going to win. We know that.
Yes, that is the case in most football games everywhere.
But in every case with Clemson.
Yeah.
72-4 where they win the turnover battle under Dabo Swinney. So pretty much, yes, it means they're going to win. So if they do that, they'll win. If they don't,
who knows? Could be a really, really rough start to the year.
It could be.
The next one, number 22, Florida at Kentucky. Kentucky, a 1-point favorite at noon on Saturday in Lexington.
Yeah, give me Kentucky minus the 1.5. I think Florida is still Florida. I think they'll show up in this game. Kentucky can do one thing. They do one thing very well. They stop the run. All Florida can do is run. So I'm sorry, Mr. Etienne. You're not going to have a big day in Lexington. They're going to put it on that quarterback to beat them, and that quarterback can't beat them. Wildcats win this. So our friends over in Kentucky, go Big Blue, baby. Let's go.
Big Blue. Yeah, I can't pick against Kentucky ever.
None of us. Me or you cannot. There's a story behind that.
People are too nice.
Yes.
The people are too nice. We got free Woodford. We got to sit at Coach Cal's desk and put our feet up on it.
Got to shoot at the Rump Arena.
Got to miss a lot of layups at Rupp Arena.
You did. I didn't.
And yeah, I'm going Kentucky. Go Big Blue.
I always remember my 3 in the corner. I walked it off.
I'm always going to remember that one layup that I made over Garrick in that building. So that's all I got to hold on to. Next, top-ranked Georgia, 14-point favorite at Auburn, 3:30 Saturday in Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, Georgia wins. Auburn covers.
Yeah,
14 is too high for me with Georgia. They play it too close to the vest. Look at the South Carolina game, just for instance. They had no business South Carolina being in that game. And not only that, up 14-3 at halftime. Yeah, I think Auburn can cause some problems. Not that Auburn's good, because they're not. They're horrible on offense. They're horrible. I mean, they make the Steelers' offense look like it's the Miami Dolphins' offense.
It's going to be a tough one to watch if you like offense.
Yeah, so By the way, how are the people out in Denver doing? I need to ask you that. Is everybody in
Oh,
Colorado okay?
dude, that's been the good thing is I don't think I've gotten any grief for being a Clemson grad with the Broncos starting of the year. People are too scared to talk about football up here. But man, people are feeling it.
Yeah.
And I just need the Panthers to win the battle of the winless teams on Sunday because there are a lot of Vikings fans up here too.
Right. So, but anyway, to answer your question, give me Auburn plus the 14.
Yeah, I'm taking Auburn plus the points too. I think same thing as you. Georgia's offense, man, is so tough to watch them play offense this year. They can run the ball, but Auburn's got a better defensive front than these other teams that they've played to start the year. So I think it maybe could cause a little bit of chaos. Still got Georgia winning, but I'll take Auburn with the points. The next one, number 11, Notre Dame at number 17, Duke. Notre Dame, a 5.5-point favorite in Wallace Wade Outdoor Stadium at 7:30 p.m. College game days there. People at Duke are excited about college game day for football, not college game day for basketball, not people hanging out in Cameron Indoor, but people getting excited to go to a football game outside in Durham, North Carolina.
That is nuts, right?
Who would have thought that? That Duke would be the undefeated team in this game.
If you'd told me at the start of the season what game is going to host game day, any game involving Duke would not be it.
Yeah.
I could go 100 games in the ACC that possibly could host game day. That's not the one I would have picked. So kudos to Duke with their start to the season and what they're doing out there. And
the next Michigan State head coach, Mike Elko, and the job he's been doing.
Mike Elko, the next Michigan State head coach. Boy, Dabo Swinney's hoping so.
Yeah, Dabo's like, come on, take it.
Then that means Clemson's definitely going to Big Ten because Dabo says he can't get away from Mike Elko. So, so anyway, but Duke, Notre Dame minus 5.5. I'm going to go with the Irish on this, and this is why. I'm going to take Notre Dame minus the 5.5.
Because they're going to play 11 players the whole game.
Notre Dame is, and Notre Dame's going to run the football.
Yep.
They can run the football on Duke. You know how I know that? Because Clemson ran the football on Duke in the second half. Clemson ran the ball up and down the field on them. And if people don't remember that, just go back and watch the game. You can go back on it. You can go all your channels and watch it. Clemson ran the ball right down Duke's throat the entire second half. 3 straight possessions. They just ran it down the field. Didn't even.
Do you think Notre Dame's going to do what Clemson couldn't do, and they're going to score when
they're going to be able to score? Why? Because they got a dominant offensive line, they got a dominant running back, and they got a quarterback who's a field general and can make the plays. So Notre Dame wins this game. I won't say comfortably, but they'll cover the 5.5. I think they'll win by like 7 to 10 points. So. And it's going to be a Notre Dame crowd. I mean, let's call it what it is.
Call it what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a national fan base.
A bunch of Catholics are coming to a Methodist church. That's all they're doing. Is it Duke? No, Duke's Presbyterian.
They're Methodist. They're Methodist.
They're Methodist? Okay. Yeah. I about messed up there.
I'm with you, though. I think Notre Dame covers. Estimate same reason as you. They're just going to run the football. I think this team actually is angry about the way that their game ended last week.
You're saying Clemson's not angry? You said this team is actually angry.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say.
You didn't say it.
That may have been
this
implied,
team is actually angry, which means you're applying the other team isn't.
This team is angry because they had 10 guys on the field for the last 2 plays in a game that they could have won, and they're angry too because people are talking bad about their grandpa. Lou Holtz. They're going to go win it for Lou Holtz, and they're going to cover the spread. And the final one of the pick 6. We got South Carolina at number 21, Tennessee. Tennessee, a 12-point favorite, 7:30 kickoff Saturday on Rocky Top.
Yeah. I think South Carolina can actually win this game straight up. I won't pick them straight up, but I think they can. I will not be surprised if South Carolina wins this game. South Carolina beat them by 100 last year.
And this is a team that lost to Florida.
And this is a team that lost to Florida. So there's issues. Now, they lost to Florida running the football, not against the pass. South Carolina can't run the football. So that might be to Tennessee's benefit here. But, man, South Carolina sure can pass it. Old Spencer Rattler's completing 74% of his passes.
It's like video
over
game
1,200
numbers.
Yards, 12 touchdowns. He's averaging 300 yards a game.
It's video game numbers.
Yeah, he's killing it.
And he's getting hit in the backfield like 5 times a game on average.
Yes, I'm not going to be surprised if South Carolina wins it. But I'm not going to pick them straight up, but I will pick South Carolina plus the 12 and is it 12 and a half?
12.
12 plus the 12. I'm picking South Carolina plus the 12. I think they cover that, and I wouldn't be surprised they win the game.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all either. And I think this is actually a comfortable line that if you're a betting man, I'd probably put some money on this one. 12 points line. Is a very comfortable line. I also think South Carolina has the potential to win the game. Yeah, they didn't look too spectacular against Mississippi State. They did on offense. I mean, Spencer Rattler did his thing.
Remember, Joe Milton's hurt too, by the way.
Yep. And even if he wasn't, it's not like he's having a marquee season either.
Exactly.
So Tennessee's got
lost to Florida.
Tennessee's got issues. South Carolina, they're going to go in with a full head of steam. Again, if anybody knows how to coach a game where they're an underdog, it's Shane Beamer. So I think that they'll cover that line too. Really wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if the line wasn't 12, if it was a little smaller, I might be willing to pick South Carolina to win it straight up.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But I think too their defense is going to give up some yards and stuff. So yeah, I'll take them with the points.
Yeah, and then South Carolina was an underdog last year, and they won 63 to what?
Yeah, they ran out of fireworks.
63 to 17 or something like that. Well, they've never scored that many touchdowns at Williams-Brice. They're not used to it.
They've only seen opponents do that.
They only see opponents do that. Generally the one coming from Western Carolina, South Carolina, that is. And,
Western Carolina, the Catamounts?
Coming from Western Carolina, the Western South Carolina part is what I was trying to say.
The northwest corner.
And that team's usually coming to collect rent. So that's why the numbers are so high usually. So, and they're coming to collect rent this year too, by the way, as Levon says. They're coming to collect rent.
Well, we appreciate you guys for joining us on this crazy journey every week. We saw some people popping in on the live stream, which we appreciate.
We do appreciate that.
If you are here at the end of the live stream and want to go back and listen to other stuff later, we do post this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get them. The numbers have been good as we've been doing this. We have a lot of fun doing it. So thank you for joining us. For Will Vandervoort, I'm Alex Dodd. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
All right, we'll talk to you next time, guys.